1. Well, hey, Dave Molenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a great word that we're going to unpack today, and it's one of these words that really hasn't surfaced up until the last probably 10 or 15 years. I remember when my dad was in the workforce, and this was a word he never talked about. My mom never talked about. So I'm going to put it in a form of a question, like we always do, and then we're going to unpack it with our awesome guests. So, as a leader or as someone on a team, how authentic are you showing up? And, that authenticity, I think, is one of these newer words. It's been around obviously forever, but I don't think it's been in the leadership world. So I found somebody that I want to unpack this with. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Jensen. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me, Dave. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So you are the founder of Authentic Leader. So fill us in on what Authentic Leader is.
So, authentic leader to me is the ability for a leader to show up who they truly are and understand their strengths and weaknesses and why they respond the way they do, and understand also their values and fears and be able to work around that and still inspire and encourage their team.
Is that what word am I accurate, or was I just living under a rock somewhere? Is authenticity been a newer term in the leadership world? I mean, you've been in this space for a long time. So I was just curious if it's something newer or if you've seen it around a lot longer than I was referring to.
No, it's a much newer thought process
Okay.
and idea and ideology that is starting to come out more and more, which is a struggle for some leaders because that means really truly being self-aware and understanding themselves.
Yeah, and I think that that's like as we start this spot right in this spot, I think it's a blind spot. We do a lot of work on blind spots, and this is a big one because you ask a
Yes.
leader, are they authentic? And I don't know about you, Jen, but I've never had someone come up to me and go, "Yeah, I'm totally not authentic. I fake it or this or that." So, in your experience, in your travels, have you noticed the same thing that it's a pretty big blind spot for a lot of leaders?
It is, and it's starting to show more and more because we have to be so much more adaptable in this crazy world that we're living in now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm interested to get your opinion because whenever we're in this kind of in this general ballpark, I ask this question and I get a variety of different answers about the fake it until you make it type of thing. Some people really buy into that. Some people don't. I'm kind of like in the middle on the thing, but I'm curious on your side from an authenticity. It sure feels fake. I mean, it you fake it till you make it. Doesn't seem like it's authentic. I kind of get the concept, but I'm just curious if you have any insight on that statement because I'm hearing that a lot lately.
Yeah, I hear it a lot too. And for me, I'm like you, it's kind of the middle of the road. Is there are certain situations, even for myself as an entrepreneur, where I don't have the confidence in what I might be doing. And so I have to project that confidence despite
Sure.
that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. If you're standing in front of a big group of people and you are a little bit nervous or apprehensive, we both speak in public, and so I mean, again, it's pretty safe to say that there are some apprehensive, some nerves and things. But again, I don't feel like it's like I'm faking something where I don't want to be here. I
No.
don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, it just feels really kind of foreign to not be authentic. So when you created Authentic Leader, was that because you were seeing a lot of people that literally were not authentic in their leadership style?
Absolutely. That's actually a majority of leaders out there.
Okay.
And while I was mentoring, that's the whole premise about where I started is I started mentoring leaders. And through that, I didn't have resources that helped me to do what I wanted to do. And so I wrote the book Developing Authentic Leaders to support me in my leadership mentoring and
Yeah.
coaching. And through that, a lot of the chapters are based on leaders that I've worked with and where they were lacking that we needed to change those behaviors.
Wow, they must have loved seeing their story in print, be like, oh my gosh, am I that bad?
I didn't put any names in there.
Good.
There's
Yeah,
no
exactly.
names.
That's good.
They
Yeah, so
don't
they
know
don't
it.
know who they are. Yeah,
No.
exactly. Well, cool. Well, hey, I want to kind of back the truck up a little bit and we'll get back to answering that question. But we have a ton of people, Jen, on the show right now listening or watching around the planet that absolutely are dying to jump into being an entrepreneur. They want to own their own business. They want to something. Sometimes they don't even know what that is. So you are in Canada, so I can't say corporate America, so I'll use corporate Canada. Is that you guys use corporate Canada? Do you say that?
No.
In Canada? No? Okay. So you were in corporate whatever
The corporate
prior
world.
corporate world, there you go. Prior to owning your own business, do you remember like early in your career was entrepreneurship was that on your radar or do you remember when that first appeared on your radar for you?
So in the back of my mind, it was when I first started, but didn't really know what to do with it. And then in Calgary, the big thing was if you wanted to be a project manager, you were a consultant. So you had to start your own consultancy firm or
Okay.
company, and it
Okay.
was could be just an individual. And so that's where I actually started
Okay.
and started to grow that way. But it wasn't the true entrepreneurship that I wanted to do. And even I remember in it was 2008 thinking, okay, I can start this, but I really like to start my own company that's going to grow and flourish. And so
Wow.
that's what I started 2 years ago.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, 2008 for us in the US was like falling off a cliff. I mean, it was just it was some of the worst economic times. So probably a good thing you didn't start that, in 2008. I don't know what it was like in Canada, but we had a hard time here. But for someone listening right now, I mean, was it something that you transitioned? Because a lot of people ask me, do you wake up and then you just quit your job and then you just decide what to do? Do you create a side hustle? And we always put the caveat in right here that there's no right or wrong way to do this. Jen's way, my way, anybody's way isn't right or wrong. It's really us sharing our journey so that hopefully you can learn from it and create your own path. But I was just curious on your end, was that something for you that happened like overnight, or did you do a side hustle for a while? How did that transition look for you, Jen?
So for me, I did a side hustle on the side and
Okay.
did that until I felt the timing was right for
Okay.
me to start to be able to move forward in this and to be financially free to do so.
Sure. Gotcha.
Because
And sometimes,
there's going to be ups and downs and you're not going to know what's going to happen from day to day.
yeah, yeah. And that's really a great point. If you're the type of, we do a ton of work with DISC in the personality profile space. And if you're the type of personality that needs security, that needs to know where your next check's coming from, that, enjoys, having that security, there's nothing wrong with it. But boy, that's completely opposite of what it is jumping into your own business because, if you don't like commission sales, then you probably wouldn't like being an entrepreneur because that's how I envision it for myself. If I
Uh-huh.
don't sell something, if I don't kill something, I don't eat. I mean, that's kind of how that is. So is that how it is for you in same scenario for you?
Totally. And so
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, you know what? I have to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's tough. We just did a podcast not too long ago on that. I think a guy's right just finished a book a couple weeks ago on that exact thing about if you got to be uncomfortable and you have to be okay with it. And it's hard for entrepreneurs because I know for some people they're trying to get away from the man, they're trying to get away from, the boss, they're trying to call their own shots. And I think that was like the biggest revelation for me was like I just moved my back in the 80s or early 90s when I started my first business. It was like I all I did was go from a boss to the customer being the boss. I mean, there still were bosses because you can't just
Yeah.
do what you want. And I love these people that think we sit on the beach and just type a couple of hours on our computer and put it down and then we lay out the rest of the day. So I don't know if it's like that up in Alberta, but sure not like that down here in the US for a lot of us.
No, it isn't.
Yeah,
You're constantly working. And that's where I've had to set boundaries for myself as well as an entrepreneur about, okay, I need some downtime for me.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you're gonna take risks and you're gonna truly figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then
sure.
you gotta start surrounding yourself with individuals who can support you in strengthening those weaknesses.
Wow, that's really good. And I think that's where I think it probably is a really separator for a lot of people because I remember when I was contemplating writing my first book and I ended up one of the guys that I knew wrote a book and he asked me the question. He said, "How many people in your phone right now have written a book, like in your whatever you call in your whatever in your
Contacts?
content?" Yeah. And I'm like, none other than you. And he said, if you don't have five people in there that you can connect with, contact, talk to, learn from, you'll probably never do it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So now I had to find people like, did you write a book? Did you write a book? But once you did that, like you said, the people around you, they either bring you up or they tear you down. And how does that, from a leader's perspective, and this just popped into my mind here. So, how does a leader work with like a team full of negative people? And how do you see that? How does he or she survive that? Because generally that team's going to try to bring that individual down.
Totally. And it depends on what role they play in it. They're the leader, you can totally change that behavior and say, hey, let's start bringing into every meeting something, some joy moment or something that happened that we're really excited and proud of. And
Yeah,
start to change the mind frame and even start celebrating the small little successes to get people to think more positively. And if you're the employee, you can do something similar to try and get set the example of what it should be like. It's going to be a grind and a struggle, but keep going through it.
yeah. Well, I love that joy moment piece because so often people like some of my clients that I work with, they're some of their team, they like dread meetings. They're just like they leave worse than they came. They're not excited. There's no joy, So I love when people start out by, one way to do it is go around the room and just say one good thing that happened to you today or this week or since we last met, whatever. But those are pieces that again, I love finding things that move, companies forward that don't cost money. I mean, it doesn't cost money to have this team start, sharing the good things that are happening because it's so easy to share the bad. We lost this customer, we lost this sale. Those sorts of things are really, obviously, from a sales perspective, a challenge. Um, what other things have you seen, joy moments type of thing? What other things do you think that people listening could, take away if they're struggling with a kind of a toxic work environment? Maybe it's a little negative. What are a couple other things that you recommend that they could do?
Start doing team building events.
Okay.
And it could be even within the office so that you could just bring snacks or chocolates just to start to bring something in there and start getting personal and asking, how are you doing? And trying to create that environment where you can have really positive, because you're with each other for 8 hours a day or more.
Right. Yep.
And you gotta try and encourage each other because if it's negative, nobody's gonna want to work there. Morale is
Yeah.
gonna go down.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think this is where some we lose some of the leaders, Jen, because they start thinking about, sitting around a campfire with a, guitar singing Kumbaya when you say team building, so they're all like, oh my gosh. And when we do team building activities for people, I mean, they are just having a ball with it and they just love it and they really learn from it. So what are some things that the team building does? What have you seen, that team building does to a team? What have you seen?
So it changes the dynamics. So you
Okay.
could go to an arcade, you could go to bowling, or mini golf, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's something that's fun, that doesn't have the pressure of the work around them, and they can kind of relax and get to know each other on a more personal level. And what it does is it changes the dynamics of the team because now they want to work with each other, they want to support each other. So if you're under a time crunch where one individual is so far behind and you need to get that individual up and speed things up, guess what? The team is now going to surround that individual because we're here to work together. We're going to help you be successful as well. And so we don't want to leave one man standing by themselves anymore.
Yeah. Well, and this is kind of like scratching the surface of the authenticity thing that we started with, right? Because and this is another thing that I see that leaders are like, okay, they'll cave in to the fact that team building or they'll cave into some of this, but they don't necessarily buy into the fact that they have to be the one to be authentic. Let the team be authentic and then I can just continue to be
No,
myself. I'm always thinking that the leader's got to be the first one in, right?
totally. And the leader
Yeah,
needs to set the example. Sometimes a team member will set the example, but the leader needs to take their cues from that and start going, maybe I need to set the example
yeah,
because that's going to define the team. And if you aren't showing up and saying, you know what, I'm human, I'm going to make mistakes, then if you're not doing that, then the team's going to be like, yeah, I don't trust him.
yeah. And I think that mistake word is just crazy because it's something that happens. There's nothing we can do. But yet when it happens, people want to like cover themselves up for at all costs. They try to get out of it, they try to justify, they try to blame others. And I don't know, but I think authentic people tend to just take the responsibility, they take the bullet, so to speak, right? And it just seems odd that you would try to just deflect that. And I know human nature, that's what we want to do. Is part of being authentic kind of not deflecting and really taking ownership of some of your shortcomings?
Absolutely. It's being accountable. And actually, and I know this word, people don't like it, vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's not a weakness.
Yep.
Stop thinking it's a weakness because it actually isn't. If you're going to go and cry in the corner, well, then that's manipulation. That's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is admitting that you are human. You're going to make mistakes and getting your team to actually hold you accountable and say, hey, I have this area is a weakness for me. So I need your support in making sure I don't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
just kindly tell me, hey, you're doing this, Bob. You reminded us to tell you not to do that. And you'd be like, okay, thanks. I won't do
Yeah.
that. Thank you. That's being authentic because you're allowing your team to be part of you as an individual.
Well, and I think that right there, it's so hard. I mean, I think the exact thing that you just said, and it's when I share it with certain groups, they just kind of have this deer in the headlights look, like you want me to fess up to something that I did, or you want me, like I always tell people, like in a blind spot world. I mean, we all have them. So the only way for me to learn about my blind spots would be for you, Jen, to say, "Hey, Dave, do you know that you're doing this?" And now if I choose to change something, that's on me. But that's kind of like I feel like in leadership, especially in a team, you as a member of that team, you have a responsibility to your team to help them with their blind spots, just like they have a responsibility to you to help you with yours. Do you get pushback on that from teams that you work with, or are people pretty open when they get to that spot?
It depends, it varies. There's a few that are open to it because they understand that they want to become that individual and that leader, that
Yeah.
authentic leader. There's some that don't recognize it and think, oh no, being authentic is just a weakness. But it's actually shown and proven that when you have authentic leaders, your performance and your profitability go up. So
Oh
wouldn't you
boy.
rather work on a team where they're all being honest and truthful about the mistakes they're making. And you know what usually happens? And I've seen this time and time in my own career. When I've made a mistake and I don't know how to fix it, and I tell my team, they go, "Oh, Jen, let's help you.
Yeah.
Because here's some solutions that we can do." There's a much greater respect. There's a greater loyalty to me as an individual and as a leader that people, it's totally transformational.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I want to go back to something you just said, which is really for people listening, this could revolutionize your business if you really let it, because Jen said the more authentic you are, the more profit that's there's a connection with authenticity and profitability. And so often we as leaders, we are really all about the bottom line, which again, that's what a company is supposed to be. So I totally get it. But I love the fact that there's a correlation between being authentic and being profitable. That's got to be hard for people to kind of accept early on in that. So how do you got if somebody like challenges you on that, or they're like, that isn't true, or what do you do in that scenario? Because I would love to hear what people like, how they rationalize and change their mind, because that could revolutionize a business if we really start taking authenticity and equating it to profit.
It's a tough one because we're still of the old mindset of you've got to do leadership in a certain way. And
Yeah,
this is breaking the mold because teams, and it depends on each team and where they're at. If they
yeah,
align their mission, vision, and values for that team to the organization, they now know the direction they're heading. And then you allow innovation and creativity because you're now allowing your team to think outside the box.
yeah.
That's where you're going to have cutting edge. And Microsoft is a key one for that, to show that they actually allowed for innovation.
Mm.
And
Well,
they were not doing great, but suddenly we're back to hearing them, especially with now Copilot.
yeah, wow, that's awesome. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to unpack a couple more of these topics, because especially the outside the box thing that you just said. So I have a question on that, Jen. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with Jen Jensen, the founder of Authentic Leader, and we are unpacking this swear word in today's world of authenticity. Some people are like, "Oh my gosh, don't use that word." That, and like you said, the other one was vulnerability. It's like, where do you get those? Some of these old school leaders that want to be the boss rather than a leader, they really struggle with that. And we'll go through those in a little bit. First of all, though, you talked about outside of the box, and there are people like, again, if you go back to DISC, there are certain personalities that do not want to think outside the box. So when you kind of start working with people, I noticed there was on your website, there was kind of a quiz to take to see what kind of leader that you were. And I'm just curious, how do you define, are there different boxes of leadership types for you, or how do you kind of handle this big word leadership, because it's just such a massive word that it's so hard to define. And I'm just curious, do you break it down into different types of leaders, is I guess my first question.
Yeah, I do break it down into different types. Like there's the visionary, there's a variety of different leaders, and
Okay.
it's just working with them and figuring out what works best for them. But also you got to change your mindset no matter what type of leader you are to what the potential is out there, and you've got to start being flexible.
Which is tough, right? Flexibility is another word, because again, I mean, let's face it, a lot of people started their own business because they didn't want to work for the man or the woman. They wanted to call their own shots like that. And they just, flexibility is like really hard in today's world, but it's so required. So, there are a variety of different leadership types. And I think, what do you do if you identify as a leader that you're strong in one area, whatever that might be, but if you've identified a weakness in your leadership style, what are some things that we could do as leaders to try to work through that?
So one of the key things is doing a self-assessment to truly understand that. And once you've identified it, don't do big steps. Start doing small little changes that are attainable and do them over and over until you're like, okay, I got this and I'm well aware of this and I'm growing in that. And then start working on the next one.
Yeah. Wow.
And don't
Well,
do a huge.
yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think it's something we often overlook because if you're in personal development or leadership development, whatever, there's this thought process that it's going to like be this 180-degree shift, right? And the reality is like you said, it's these small little course corrections that make the big, huge difference. And for a great visual for that we like to use is, so we're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we have a house in San Diego, California. And if you take off on an airplane from Milwaukee and you're heading towards San Diego, if the in the air the pilot decides to make a 2-degree course correction. I mean, nobody feels it on the plane. Nobody really notices that there's a small course correction like you were talking about. But I tell you what, when you get into California, you end up at LAX airport instead of San Diego. And that's like a painful 2.5 hour drive of 5 lanes of solid traffic. It's horrible. But the interesting thing is that little course correction didn't really get noticed along the way, but then it had massive results at the end. Is that kind of what you
Yeah.
see, that your small course corrections have pretty big results on the back end?
Totally. And the team may not notice it at first, but all of a sudden the team's going to be like, wait a second, something's changing here.
Yeah. Do you feel like some of those people then on that team, Jen, do they end up like jumping ship because they liked it, they like the toxic, they like the negative, they like the unhealthy? Do you notice people, once a team starts to get healthier, that there are certain people that just vacate their job and they bail because of these changes?
Some do, some continue to want to be toxic. And that's where, you know what, if the whole team is working together, but this one individual isn't, that may mean that you need to either move them to another department or they have to be let go because they're just not a fit.
Yeah,
Because you want to
gotcha.
continue with that health and that
Sure.
innovation. And especially when we have to be so adaptable in this day and age with
Right.
everything, with all that's going on.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's really a hard thing for a lot of entrepreneurs. And again, if you are in the corporate world and you're considering moving into owning your own business, that's a hard thing. I think that a lot of people struggle with is the realization that I may have to terminate an employee, I may have to correct an employee. There's a lot of negative things in there that come with that potentially. I think it's a great thing. We had a guy that was just not a fit. And one of the companies that I owned, and just had to let him go. And, said he was unhappy with it. But I'm like, you're not happy here. You're going to be way happier at your next job because you're just not happy here. And you're creating issues for other people around you. Do you normally see that? I know we hear of quiet quitting a lot. Do you see that, or do you see more people that are like, loud and boisterous as they are defying leadership? I'm just curious if you see some quiet quitters and some louder, if it's one or more, which way do you see them?
It's a mix
Okay.
because you get some that are loud and then you get some that are just quiet and they just go away.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if they just went away quietly? Sometimes it's like better, if they don't show up or whatever, but it just seems odd. How did you end up? I'm curious, how did you end up focusing in on the leadership side? There's so many things to consult about. There's so many things in business to work through. We focus on team development. We focus on customer experience. Those are our two big ones that we focus on, and you focus on the leadership side of it, which is awesome. Was there a reason that you ended up there, or what was the overarching reason for you?
So the big reason I did a project management for years and years, and through that, being in middle management and having to lead with all the accountability but no authority, I
Yeah.
also witnessed a whole group of individuals that the organizations are leaving behind, and that is middle management. And
Gotcha.
that was heartbreaking to me because they're our up and coming and they're the next generation. So, how do we better mentor and coach them so that they can be exceptional leaders? Because how many exceptional leaders have anybody on who's listening had in their career? And even for yourself, Dave. For
Yeah.
me, I've had two, and that's the
Yeah.
average answer.
Okay. And that seems to be like a tough spot if somebody gets stuck in that middle spot, and middle management tends to be probably the first one that gets downsized. It's the first
Yeah.
one that gets, extra work put on them when other areas are feeling the pinch. And I have to say, the vast majority of my career, both owning businesses as well as coaching now, is at the small to medium size business. So I don't know what it would be like to be a Toyota or GE where there's 20, 30 different levels or whatever that is. I mean, is that where you were at do you work in that space where there is a significant amount of levels in some of these businesses?
My preference is the small to medium because that's where I can be most effective.
Sure. Yeah. It feels hard. And again, a couple exposures that I've had over the years to these larger companies, I feel like it's like, I don't even feel like I can make a difference. And so
Oh,
that's one of the nice things about owning your own business is you kind of find your sweet spot, you find your strength, you find where you're good at. And I'd much rather work with a 5 or 10 person team than a 50 or 100 person team because it just doesn't really seem to. I don't know. I'm sure there's plenty of people, that can do a great job at it, but it just seems like that's a hard 50 to 100 people to change them and to expose them to some stuff. It's got to be tough. So I'm glad you and I are pretty much in the same space. It's easier to have change in those smaller areas. So, I want to ask you about burnout because, we do hear that word a lot where we have people experiencing it. And it's like you talk about, there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of reduction of staff. There's a lot of joining of roles and things like that. Are there anything, how can leaders lead without experiencing that burnout? Is there anything that you've noticed that could help our listeners today?
leaders need to master the art of delegation.
Okay.
Don't try and do it all. That's what your team is there to support you, and it'll actually help your team
Yeah,
expand their skill set if they can take on more. And it may not be how you would do it,
sure.
but allow them to do it the way that they can as long as the outcome is what you need.
Yeah. Well, you just heard a bunch of brakes skidding, a bunch of because they're like, oh my gosh, delegate. Wait a minute here. I'm the only one that can do that. I am only one I can do it best. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm in the same spot with you. We use the Eisenhower matrix and they talk about delegation in there where is it important and urgent, important, not urgent, not urgent, not important. There's like a box. And one of the things that you do when you find something that's important to do but not urgent is you delegate that to somebody else to be able to do. Well, I'll tell you, that seems to be where most of the pushback that I see,
Yeah.
because they have this blind spot that no one can do it as good as I can. And I agree with people that the first 5 times they can't do it as good as you. But if it's a highly repetitious task that has to be done, by the time they've done it 10, 20, 30 times, whatever that number is, they are going to probably get it better than you. Do you find a lot of your leaders struggle with that delegation and just kind of hands off the wheel, so to speak?
Absolutely, because they're used to being the subject matter expert. And
Yeah,
now they're in a leadership role where they need to be the business architect across all functions instead of an expert in one area. And
yeah,
so now you need to hand over a lot of the stuff that you previously did and allow somebody else to take it on. And doing so, you just need to set clear expectations of what you want. Don't tell them how to do it. They might actually find a better way to do it than what you did.
Right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. And but so that kind of is counterintuitive because part of the reason we started our own business was we can do it better, we can do it faster, we can do it a different way. And I get that piece. But boy, it doesn't take long. In the first employee that you bring on or the first 1099, that the contractor you bring on. I remember, my first person that I brought on was like bookkeeper because I absolutely hated to do any type of accounting work. I've never balanced a checkbook in my life. I just don't like it. I always have had people to do that for me. So when I hired that first person to do that, they're like, these books are a mess. I'm like, yeah, that's just what it was. That's just me. I'm sorry. But, it would have been super easy for me to defend my position. It would have been super easy. I just say, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at accounting. I don't want to be good at accounting. I have no interest. I don't want to take night courses on QuickBooks. I don't want to know anything. I can read a P&L. I can understand it for business purposes. I don't need to know how you got there. I just like looking at the end result. And I'm just curious, is like people don't want to delegate. Is there any like reason that really pops up for you as to why they seem to struggle with that relinquishing control?
The number one thing that's come up is fear. It's
Okay.
fear of somebody outshining them. It's with their confidence. It could be fear of losing control and not being in control.
Well, and you talked about Microsoft, and Steve Jobs said, I loved when he was alive. He said, we don't hire dumb people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people and they tell us what to do. Well, I tell you what, that took me a while to learn that because to your point, I mean, I can be vulnerable and say that I started a business for a reason. And the last thing I wanted was somebody to kind of like elevate above me. So early in my career, I was like, threatened by that. But boy, it doesn't take long for you to realize that you want other people around you to excel and you don't want to hold them back. And so do you see a lot of young, immature, not immature as much as untrained, I guess is the word, leaders trying to hold others back so that they're always on top? Do you see that much?
All the time. And it's not young leaders, it's actually older leaders. And then they tend to surround themselves with yes people that
Yeah.
will say yes to everything they say instead of surrounding themselves with individuals who will challenge them and make them better.
Wow, that's great. What great words. And it's hard. We're not here saying this is easy.
No.
Uh, we are here saying it's possible to do. And whether you are looking at, developing authentic leaders, the practical guide for all leaders, the book that, Jen wrote, whether it's that or, connecting with Jen, the goal here is for you to be a better leader because I know that when a better leader has a better team. I mean, that's just like, my book, we prove that a good customer experience, people spend more. And a good team will provide a better customer experience. So there's a lot of positives in sharing and building your team. But if somebody's stuck in their leadership career, and they don't know what to do, they're hearing what we're saying, some of it is clicking, some of it doesn't make sense yet. What's like a couple things that they can do? Are there any simple things that they can do to kind of get the ball rolling, at least to get off dead center when it comes to that leadership style or that leadership career?
I think the key thing that leaders need to start to do is invest in themselves. And
Okay.
even if your organization isn't investing in you, invest in yourself to be that effective leader and go and get the support that you need, or surround yourself with individuals who will mentor you for or guide you or walk beside you, even accountability partners. I have different individuals for different parts of my business. I have an accountability partner, I have a business advisor. You've just got to start surrounding yourself with individuals that will hold you to it and walk you through it.
Yeah. And I think that's counterintuitive to why we got into this in the first place, because we kind of wanted to, again, get away from, some of us wanted to get away from people. We wanted to get away from, all the things that we're talking about, accountability and, mentorship and all that. But I tell you, it's really hard to build and grow a successful business without having the input from other people. Whether it was just like me having a CPA, I can't do my own CPA stuff. I have an attorney because I can't do my own attorney stuff. There's certain people that we think, oh yeah, that's just natural. But then when it comes to a coach or an accountability partner or some type of round table somewhere where some you can share with somebody, hey, I'm really struggling. Because those are hard words for a lot of entrepreneurs to utter, and they usually just work harder, right? You dig down, you'd work harder, work longer, and it just doesn't seem to work. And I'm just curious, if you do you have a lot of people that you run into that think that just the answer is just work harder and it'll all work out?
Oh, totally. And I've even had to change my mindset in areas where I didn't realize I needed to do as much marketing as I need to do.
Yeah,
So I've had to bring on a resource who helps supports me with the marketing, and she's phenomenal.
yeah. So you mean you don't just start a business day one and then there's like a line of 100 people waiting to get in, right?
Not
Like,
typically.
oh my gosh, Jen, I can't. I've been waiting forever for you to start this, authentic leader, man. Sign me up, right? And I think that's a huge misnomer that I see a lot, where people just think throw up a website, have maybe some brick and mortar, do a little social media campaign on LinkedIn, and before you know it, you think there's going to just be a plethora of people waiting. So, but if you're stuck, I love what you said is invest in yourself. Whatever that looks like, it's different for different people. But I think, it's sometimes maybe you're taking a night class. Sometimes you're asking your company, for some type of leadership development. And I'm assuming then, as we start to land the plane today, Jen, that's where authentic leader comes in. That's some of the things that you do, is that coaching and mentoring of leaders. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate. And I love doing it and seeing the changes that people are making.
So with you being in Canada, are you just living on Zoom now, pretty much? Because, or do people have to travel to see you? What do the logistics look like for that?
So it depends on what they want. I will fly down and meet individuals if they need to. I will go into organizations because I feel that in person helps. We won't
Sure.
do all the sessions in person, but that's where Zoom helps. And that's where one of the good things that came out of the last 5 years is that hybrid view and how you can do a lot of work on video.
Yeah, I never in a million years prior to COVID did I think I could do anything on Zoom. I didn't even know it existed because everything I did was in person. So I'm traveling all over the place to do these things. And then we get shut down. And there are a few of my clients that were not, what did they call it, essential in the US. There was a lot of them that were. So we just kept on business as usual. But there were some that are like, they're making me stay home or whatever. And then somebody's like, "Hey, did you ever see this Zoom thing?" I mean, I remember Skype, but it was like so not useful and sketchy. But boy, I tell you, Zoom has really been, or Teams, whatever you use, it's
Yeah.
just revolutionized the industry. So I'm glad that here you either would be able to go in person or on Zoom, because it's, to go an hour meeting from Canada into the US somewhere, it's a day to get there and then a day of meetings and then a day to get home. It's like 3 days to do and then a day to recover. So that's like almost a whole week when you could just do it on Zoom like we're doing it now. So I think,
Yeah.
like there's been a ton of good things that have happened in the last 5 years. So a couple questions before I let you go. What would your tip of the day be today, Jen? Maybe it's something that we talked about. Maybe it's something that still is waiting to get out from you. But like for somebody listening today, what would your tip of the day be?
Leadership is about legacy, and leaders we remember most helped us succeed, empowered us to reach our full potential, and made lasting impact on our lives.
Wow. And that's really what a leader. So when people, I laugh when you ask the question, why do you want to be a leader? And I've had people, I want to boss people around. I want to tell people what to do. I'm like, wow, wrong reason to be a leader, you know? And I love what you said. It's a legacy. And, there's this whole thing that goes along with it. We could spend another hour just on excuse me, just on the legacy piece. But again, I think it's important to understand why you want to be a leader, whether you're aspiring to be a leader or you're actually in leadership now. And why are you in that spot? What is it? Hopefully it's not the paycheck. Hopefully, or just the paycheck, just the status. I sure hope that there's some, thing that you want to give back to your team. You want to invest in your team, you want to build your team up, you want to create this legacy for yourself. So thank you, thanks for the tip of the day. Last question: if somebody wants to get a hold of you, if somebody wants to learn more about your book, about you, maybe they have some questions that they want to ask you, what's the best way for people to connect and get a hold of you?
So they can connect on my website, authenticleader.ca, or they can email me at info@authenticleader.ca.
Awesome. Authenticleader.ca. CA is for Canada, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes.
I thought it was California. Now I'm glad I didn't say California because I was like, that doesn't make sense. You're in Canada. So, and you're on LinkedIn. And then the book, Developing Authentic Leaders, a Practical Guide for All Leaders, you published last year. Is that available on your website? Is that available on Amazon? Where can we grab a copy of that?
Amazon, and you can go to my website. There's links to various sites that you can go and get it from.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for hanging out with us today. I love the fact that hopefully, if one person listening moved the needle on their authenticity and their vulnerability, then you know what? This 45 minutes was definitely worth it. And I'm guessing, based on how well you delivered the message, there's going to be a lot more people that are at least going to look at their vulnerability and they're going to look at their authenticity as a leader. And hopefully, they'll be able to take some of the things that we talked about today and apply them. And again, to the listener, rather than jump into your next podcast or jump into your next activity, just sit with what you just learned for a minute and even think of one or two things that you're going to do different in your leadership. Or if you're on the team, what are one or two things different than you could do there so that, again, the team is going to be better for it, the company's going to be better for it, and at the end of the day the customer is going to be better for it as well. So it's truly a win-win-win, and it really starts with you. And that's why we do this each week. That's why Jen was gracious with her time to help unpack this authenticity piece. So thank you so much for the authentic leader, and I can't wait to see what's next coming out of Canada by you. And again, thanks for all you're doing in this space.
Well, thanks for having me.